Can we please warmly welcome up to these three stools with me here, Danica, Mark and Rick, who is on stage still? He's out the back. All right, Rick might just come out when he joins in. Give it up for these three. Tonight, yeah, come on in. Yeah, get right close. Tonight we're going to be looking at the topic of addictions. Here he is. How's Rick? Give it up for Rick, everybody. Tonight we're looking at the topic of addictions. And so addictions is one of those things that impacts pretty widely. You'd probably agree that there are some things that you know exist either in your friends' lives, your own lives, your family's lives, people around you, that we do frequently. Sometimes they're secretive, sometimes they're known. We do so frequently that even when they're damaging, they're hard to break out of the cycle of doing. So some really obvious ones might be like drugs and alcohol that we see a whole lot. People talk a whole lot about technology use. Gaming addiction is really on the rise, especially among our generation. Sexual ones as well, like pornography, that kind of thing, are really sinister and widespread. But there's heaps of other addictive things, things that we go to make us feel better. And even though we know they can be destructive for us, we keep going to them. Sometimes even, I wonder if you've got a friend who is like addicted to there being drama in their life. Sometimes they're like, there's a bit of pain going on, so they find drama everywhere and they stir it up. There's always a friendship problem or a boyfriend problem, a girlfriend problem, something going on because we want something to fill or cover something going wrong within us. So even if that's not particularly your story, I'm very confident that it's the people around you's story. And so we wanted to bring these guys into the conversation tonight, share a bit of their story, knowledge, expertise, experience with us. So hopefully we can glean something from it that anyone here can take something from. So can I throw over to you guys? Maybe we can go 1, 2, 3. Maybe just introduce yourself. Tell us about your role here at CY. And a bit about what you do outside of CY as well.
I'm Mark. I'm a Year 8 leader now. Right over there. Outside of CY, I've worked in AFL media and currently got a job as a bartender.
Come on, fantastic. Very good. Which you've come straight from, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, bravo.
So my name's Danica. I'm a Year 9 girls leader. I'm currently a university student and I study psychology and social work and also work retail on the side as well.
Well done.
Hi, I'm Rick. Hey, I'm a Year 8 leader as well. I'm also a worship team leader here and I'm a university student as well. So I do, thanks. I do music at uni and I also kind of teach part-time as well.
Fantastic. Gee, we're a warm crowd for these three tonight. Fantastic. Given the topic of addiction, I wonder if you might just be able to give us a brief glimpse about what that topic of addiction has looked like in your own story, how that's featured for you, maybe what any of your experience with addiction has been like. Would anyone like to kick us off there?
Well, gambling for me has been a big addiction that I've struggled with and struggling to a lesser extent now, but it's still, November being the Melbourne Cup, it always comes up and it's everywhere. You can't escape it with the ads and stuff like that. So for me, it was really tough, this Melbourne Cup, but I felt I did all right, not give in as much as I have done in the past.
Sure. Thanks, Mark.
I feel like I've had two that have kind of really impacted my life for quite a while. So growing up, I think a gaming addiction was a big one. And then starting around high school or late primary school, porn was also a big one as well. Yeah. So those two are kind of the ones that really impacted my life in really negative ways.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
I think for me, I think addiction to beauty standards was a very big one for me, especially during my high school time.
Sure.
Because we're just surrounded by so much media, beauty is everywhere and, want to be better, to look better, and all that.
Yeah. That's great. I wonder, in your sort of stories there, if we're going to flesh those out a little bit and sort of unpack them so that we can all relate, talk us through the point of sort of getting into a stage where you might call that an addiction. How did that kind of start out for you? Were there things going on that sort of that you jumped on to that as a bit of a life raft? Were people encouraging that around you? Maybe give us a bit of the story of how that became what you might classify an addiction.
I think for me it's definitely a case of a go-to when I'm down rather than going to God. It's saying, well, I know that feeling of when I win, so that's the feeling I want. But, I mean, you don't get that all the time with anything else but God. So I guess that's what it was. I'm not sure I was really encouraged or anything, but, I mean, when you get a win, that's the feeling. It's like they kept you wanting to go back for more. But, I mean, yeah, it's something that's not as, I mean, I've kept it secret for a while, but, yeah, it's something that is,
Yeah. I think as well what you were saying about like around Melbourne Cup Carnival and stuff, I don't think there's many places you can go and not see betting ads somewhere. Like there's a whole lot of society channeling people toward things like gambling, so there's definitely a societal encouragement, I'd say. Yeah.
I think for me, I think it's started off when, I started realizing, oh my gosh, celebrities are so pretty, they've got this, having thick brows is really nice, those kind of standards when they become like, everyone knows about it. And then I started thinking, well, what do I have? What can I do about it? And then like you start experimenting with like makeup and like, you just try to do whatever you can do. And then when you get complimented and someone notices the change, I think like that kind of really satisfied that feeling for me. Yeah, so I think that's when I realized when I was just really unhappy with myself, no matter what I did, it just wasn't enough. I think that's when I realized, hey, I think something's not right.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
I think I'll focus on the gaming one for this one. So I was born in China, but I came to Australia at a very young age. Not really good with English or much like that. So I kind of always really wanted to be in my own world, in my own space a lot. And so kind of gaming was like this world that I could kind of go to that like, like outside of the real world kind of thing. So I kind of feel like it was getting it was a big one, especially when my mood was down. I didn't really want to talk to anyone, I just kind of wanted to do my own thing. So I kind of really noticed it started taking over when like relationship with family and friends kind of started to dip as well. Like I started to get a lot more arguments and fights with my family. And just like gaming in general just took over like maybe like half of my day. And didn't really do much, wasn't really productive. So, yeah.
That's good. So you just touched there, Rick, on some of your relationships. I guess I'd like to just hear a bit about the impact that you noticed from something like an addiction when you realise there's a problem. You said your family a little bit there. I don't know if you have any more to share with that, maybe the other two as well. What was the impact like? Because I know that part of the trap sometimes with addiction is we can think it only affects me. Did you have any experience with that, like it affecting you or it being sort of broader?
Well, yeah, I feel like it affected me first, of course, and kind of just affected like a lot of other things like sleep habits as well. I don't know if anyone kind of feels that way, where like gaming just kind of takes over the way that you kind of go about your regular daily life that you should be.
Totally.
Yeah, and so that kind of slowly progressed down the line of always being kind of cranky. And like again, like didn't really want to talk to anyone, right? So even like with family and stuff, if my dad was telling me off, then I just get really like buggy about it, and kind of didn't want to give my attention to my family and just kind of give my attention to myself. So definitely affected a lot. I think in the high school years, definitely coming around to like the middle of high school when studies started getting a little bit more serious. So that was definitely a negative impact in the way that because I was gaming so much. I was not spending time with either my family or doing stuff that I should be like studying or doing other stuff.
This one definitely impacted like everyone around me, especially my parents, because, you know, they gave birth to me, and, you know, I was complaining about the way I look, but, you know, I take after them, and, you know, like now that I think about it, that's so rude to like my parents. And also, you know, God created me in his image, you know, and I'm saying I'm not happy with what God has made me to be. It also affected like my school life as well, because it got to the point where I didn't want to go outside anymore. I skipped school a lot. And I just didn't go out. I just didn't want to talk to anyone, stay at home. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
It affected my social life and my friendship relationships. There'd be days where I don't have the money to go out or anything, so there was that. It affected my family because I'd feel ashamed of what I've done, so it's like, affecting how much input I'd actually let them have, and I'd basically close up on those days, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned that initially it was secret for you, Mark. So if you feel like it was affecting relationships and that sort of thing, before you came out and said, I think maybe there's a problem here, do you think other people knew that there was a problem, or did they just sort of think, you know?
I think they might have guessed there was a problem. I don't think they would have guessed of how bad it was at the time. I don't think I realised how bad it was at the time until I spoke to somebody and opened up to them about it, and then I actually looked back and went, okay, maybe that was actually a bigger issue than what I thought it was.
Yeah, sure. Danica, I might just throw back to you as well. You were saying about like the culture around beauty and sort of trying to chase that down. Do you feel like yours is maybe a bit different in that it doesn't feel like the challenge is isolated to you, but a whole lot of people around you might have been facing a really similar challenge too? Does that sort of change the dynamic of it, knowing that I'm not necessarily affecting people negatively because we're all in this together, challenged by this? Do you want to speak into that at all?
I think the dangerous thing, especially with females, is we both, like when someone opens up about it, we feed into it. So I don't know if, there were some situations where I'd purposely tell people, hey, you know, I've got this massive pimple on my face, it's really ugly, I can't hide it, blah, blah, blah. And then they will also be like, oh, you know, I've got this and this and this. And I feel like it's a very toxic environment where both, you know, when you share, you end up creating more mess, and it doesn't exactly normalize it. It kind of leaves you like, you know, like you're still like, but my issues affect me, even though they have it, but I don't know how they feel. Like it's a very personal kind of feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Bravo. And Rick, given what we were just saying there about technology use and gaming being really broad, for someone that was sitting there saying, yeah, it can affect my sleep sometimes. Yeah, I spend time gaming and not with family, but I feel like that's what I'm really after. Like I find it's a good release when I'm gaming and that kind of thing. Is there anything from your story that you'd maybe throw into that mix for someone to think about that's kind of not seeing the real issue with, you know, playing a whole lot of gaming and...
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people in the high school age, for example, don't actually think gaming is a problem, or like a lot of gaming is a problem. I don't think a lot of high schoolers think that porn is a problem either. And so when you talk to your friends, when you talk to people that you know, they might say, for example, like, porn is okay. Like you're releasing your kind of just pent up temptation or pent up desires or whatever. And it's okay. And gaming is kind of like a release as well. And like these kind of like releases that are not of God is okay. And so I feel like I was bombarded by a lot of these kind of like kind of first world society kind of views, in fact. So so I think maybe like some people here might not think that porn or gaming is a problem, but I think if you kind of delve into the word a little bit and just kind of look at what it says, I think like if you kind of want to read up on it later, like 1 Corinthians 6 kind of just talks about like how like sexual desires especially kind of like affect your body first, and you kind of like the fact that you're giving your desires, or you're feeding into your desires, means that you're not feeding into God, or you're not giving yourself to God. You're giving it to your body. And so as soon as anything that kind of takes over that, and we kind of say, oh, I'm going to give to my bodies first, I'm going to give to myself first, and then I'll think about God later. Rather than going to God first and saying, I need to give everything to you. I think that's when it becomes a problem. I think I feel like a lot of young followers of Jesus need to know that as well. Like God first, and then everything else after that.
Yeah, well. What I'll throw open to anybody who'd like it. So I suppose there is a bit of a difference between people that might have like God and Jesus and church as their background and worldview, and the rest of our friends and maybe family members and stuff who don't. So you said there are a bunch of people who don't see things like porn and gaming as an issue. If people are here and maybe they don't necessarily see a problem, maybe their friends or family don't either, is there any way you could speak into how someone might support a friend or point out that maybe there is an issue at all outside of sort of the Christian worldview, or is that a bit of a challenge? I don't know. It's a bit of a curveball. Would anyone like that?
I might start since I'm holding the mic anyways. I think that's a really good question. I think that's a really good point as well. I kind of want to direct the question in a different way, if that's okay.
That's fine.
And so I kind of want to see in a broader picture. If someone doesn't know Jesus, then they don't know a lot about bodily desires either, I think. So I think it's really important to point someone to Jesus first and say that if you want someone to kind of realize that addiction is a problem, or that porn or gaming is a problem, or for example, like beauty and stuff like that, focusing on ourselves is a problem, I think they need to know Jesus first. Kind of need to know the gospel and kind of what Jesus brings on the table. And he says, well, seek his kingdom first, and seek his righteousness first. I think that's really important for someone who doesn't know Jesus. And then once they meet Jesus and they kind of recognize the problems themselves, then I think that becomes a lot easier in terms of like journeying with them, with their addiction, battling with their kind of desires. Yeah.
With taking that God element out of it is, really think is there a dependency on it? So is their mood changed by gaming? If they don't play the gaming, are they changed socially? Are they drawn out of that? It goes back to that dependency. Are they dependent on it? I think if you withdraw that, how are they coping? Gaming addiction, how are they coping if they're away from a computer, Xbox, PlayStation? Do they need to have that screen time to feel, I guess, I don't know the word for it, but sane in a sense, or relaxed? They go back to it to have that feeling of that sensation of happiness.
Okay. Yeah, do you know?
This one's a hard one. Because with what I study, social work, I do meet a lot of people who they do have addictions, but it's hard to explain to them because they're not necessarily Christian. I think agreeing with what Mark said, it's mainly how bad, like how, I guess, on a spectrum, you can use something or do something moderately, but it's like if they can't live without it, or if it's affecting, different areas of their lives, that's when it becomes an issue. And I think that's when it doesn't necessarily have to be like, I guess, worldly things. It's just, you can't, you're not, I guess, coping with what's going on around because of this addiction.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And so, obviously there's a need being met with these things that we do. Do you want to unpack it all just in your experience? What is the need that's not being met in the first place, maybe? And then why do we go for these things to the point where they're a problem for us?
Yeah. I think it really goes back to, your brain. And I think it's funny because we always just say, your brain does this and this. But I think Jesus really, like, God made your brain so, unique and so interesting. So pretty much what happens when an addiction is formed, I guess, you do something it's pretty hard to explain, so I'll probably explain it with an example.
Sure.
For example, I guess I work with these girls, and they love bubble tea. I used to not drink bubble tea. And then, and then one day I saw them drinking bubble tea, and I was having a pretty bad day, and they're like, oh my gosh, you need to try some. So I was like, okay, I'll have some. And it's not like I haven't had it before, but then, because I was having a bad day, drinking it made me happier. And therefore I associated, having a bad day at work, I can go treat myself with bubble tea. And your brain remembers that. It remembers that, this action or whatever you're doing, it brings you pleasure or it brings you a good feeling. And therefore, it will crave that. So when you're missing that, when you're not feeling good or when you're missing a feeling, your brain remembers, okay, so I did this last time and it felt good. Therefore, if I go back to that, I won't feel the same way as I'm not going to feel down anymore. Yeah, and I think that's the interesting part about, I guess, more of the biological stuff when it happens in addictions. We don't necessarily know from the start what we're trying to fulfill, but I think the first step is knowing that it is fulfilling something.
Yeah, sure. So with that said, does there have to be something to fill that for you? If you're going to move on from whatever you're addicted to, do you then have to find a new thing that gives you a new sense of something? And I guess on that point, if you want to jump in there, you can. But what does it look like to break through with addiction? Once you realise there's a problem, once you feel like there's something, that you need to stop, what does it look like to push through, and how did that come about?
I think, speaking in a Christian way, I think we're very lucky. We're privileged to have God. We're privileged to have, someone to walk life with. And I guess with that bubble tea addiction, short-lived, when I felt that way, I'd just say a quick prayer, be like, Jesus, I'm having a really bad day. I've had some really bad customers, or I've had a really bad situation. I just pray that, you can help me feel better, or just saying that, and I think verbally saying, this is what's happening, and just surrendering that to God. I think that's something we're lucky to have, that we can do. I'd say in the psychology and social work way, there are coping mechanisms that you can learn or they can give you. But I think, having Jesus is so strong. Just surrendering and acknowledging that, this is going on and, this needs to stop. I think that's the first step. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. If someone, I guess, I always remember there was this one thing someone said, change won't happen unless the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change. So until I have a real reason why I want to stop something, I'm probably not going to stop it. If someone gets to a point where they recognise there's a problem, they sort of break through, they maybe get other people on board and tell people about it, can you maybe share with us anything that you can do to stop yourself from falling back into something that you might have called an addiction before? Is there a way to go from an unhealthy use of something to a healthy one? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of want to add to Danica's a little bit first. Sure. And just kind of say, I 100% want to emphasize that it is, for us, at least it is Jesus. I think for everyone, really, it is Jesus that kind of is the breakthrough. Kind of reminded of the story in Luke where Zacchaeus is addicted to money and he's kind of taxing people way too much. And then all it took was Jesus to say, I want to have dinner at your house and I want to meet you. And then as soon as Zacchaeus met Jesus, then he had a breakthrough. I think that's really important. I feel like it's really important to want to meet Jesus. I feel like every single time you want to spend time with Jesus and you're hungry for Jesus, you won't be hungry for your sexual or your bodily desires. And at that point, you're still human though. You still need help, always, constantly. And I always tell my boys this. I always tell kind of the people that I mentor kind of a little bit about this, but you need someone that is accountable to you. You need to find people to be accountable and vulnerable to. And every single time you feel like you're put into a trap where you're like, I know that I'm going to give into this at any point. Chuck a message, give them a call. Have someone there to walk this journey with you. But to look to God first, always. Because if you're hungry for God, then you're not going to be hungry here for your own bodily desires, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, just going back up what Rick said and stay accountable to somebody. Yeah, be honest with them. If you fall into the trap, be honest. They find somebody that you can actually journey with, and you'll probably be surprised at how supportive that they'll be through the times where you think, oh, I'm too ashamed to actually tell anybody about this, to the point of I'm actually strong enough to tell somebody about this. I'm strong enough to actually defeat this. I think, yeah, that's the biggest piece of advice I can actually tell is you're not in this alone. You're like, the breakthrough is you're not alone.
I was going to finish on, if there's one bit of advice you could give to yourself when you were younger, what might it be? But I think they were pretty good answers. With that new rephrased question, is there anything else you might add to what you just said? Any of the three, just in closing? Because people might be sitting in the exact same spot where you were maybe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, whatever it was. And they might be able to hear that advice that's really pertinent to them. How'd you answer that? What advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you now know?
I think just to be courageous and admit it. I think I wasted a lot of time just giving excuses, not really believing that I had a problem. And I think the biggest one is also everyone has their own problems. Everyone is going through addictions in one way or another. And it's about being vulnerable, accepting it, admitting it. I think, I think that's the first step I wish I could have done earlier.
One piece of advice, it's not weak to tell others your weaknesses. There's a real strength in discovering them and actually opening up about it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I just can kind of add to that. It's just like it's okay to not be perfect and to kind of stumble and fall. Like it's totally okay to be human, kind of thing, But yeah, definitely, I feel like talking to people about it has always kind of been a solution. Talking to people that have journeyed it before as well, and looking to people that can mentor me. Even look to just leaders. When I was at CrossWay, you just look to leaders who kind of walk with me like on a weekly basis, just catch up with me always. Like, how are you going with this? Are you managing well? And if not, how can I be helping? They always do that for me, and I feel like every single time, it just feels so encouraged to know that someone's got my back. Someone's journeying this with me, and I'm not alone. Yeah, sure.
Let's go. Fantastic. We might be pressed to a time, so I hope we all glean something from that. Can we thank these guys for sharing their story with us? Thank you very much. And we're going to welcome the band back up now. I think it's really a great opportunity as we're thinking in this space. I think something probably would have caught you there that you've experienced before, that you know of, that you felt, and I wonder if maybe there's a reason that something stood out for you. And I think when God grabs our attention, there's generally purpose behind it. And so if that was you tonight and you felt like, yeah, God grabbed my attention with that, I think it's really important that we give that over to Him. So what we're going to do now is a bit of time of worship and prayer. Can I welcome you down the front if you'd like during the next couple of songs. If you'd like to come down the front and get some prayer from a leader, come on down. But otherwise, just hand that over to God. Just talk to God. Ask Him what your next step is, and He'll guide you through it because He's got your back there. So.